Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Monster's webinar on the brave new world of Gen Z job searching. Many of you submitted questions in advance, ranging from employers asking why candidates so frequently ghost them, to job seekers asking how to stand out so they don't get lost in the recruitment process. We've done our homework to gather experts who can help answer these questions and more over the next hour. So for today's panel, we've asked a mix of Gen Z candidates, either new grads who are still in their job search, or ones who've been recently hired, as well as people on the other side of the fence, those doing the hiring, to join us for what we hope will be a really open and honest discussion benefiting everyone who's joining us today. We'll start with introductions. I'm Vicki Salemi. I'm a career expert for Monster, former recruiter and author. Now meet our panelists. Who wants to start? How about Amy? Why don't you kick us off?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Waryas. I lead the people and culture function for the Boston Red Sox and Fenway Sports Management. I'm excited to be here with everyone.
Jill?
Yeah, I'm Jill Eubank. I am with Randstad Staffing, and I am a vice president on our office professional side of our placement business.
Great. Juliana?
Hi, everyone. I'm Juliana Akuyamo. I'm the Chief Talent Officer at Arnold. We're an advertising agency here in Boston. So hello to all the folks who are chirping away in the chat from Boston. I'm also the Chief Culture Officer for Havas Creative North America. Lovely to see everyone.
Alice?
Hi, everybody. My name's Alice. I'm a job seeker. I'm currently a junior studying computer science at the University of Central Florida, and I'm interning with IBM as a co-op UX researcher. Thank you.
Lillian?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lillian. I'm currently a senior at UC Berkeley. I'm studying business administration. And after I graduate this May, I'll be starting in the APMN program or Associate Product Marketing Manager program at Google in the coming fall. I also create content on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube about my experiences as a UC Berkeley college student and for Gen Z job search and internship tips. So feel free to check it out there.
Great. Shelly?
Thank you. Howdy, y'all. My name is Shelly Hernandez. I'm a university recruiter for Pinterest. Most of my team is based in California, but I'm in Houston, Texas. So hello, fellow Texans. I see a lot of y'all. And yeah, thanks for having me.
And last but not least, Julian. I just went in order of the boxes on my screen. Julian, why don't you take us home?
No worries. Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Julian. I'm currently a product manager for IBM's Enterprise Performance Management team. I got my Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Babson College, Small Business School in Massachusetts in May of 2020. And I'm also a content creator on TikTok at Julian. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And thanks for everyone for posting in the chat where you are. We see all over Montreal, El Paso, Atlanta. So it's wonderful to have you here. Throughout this session, we're going to be dropping stats left and right. And those are from Monster's new Gen Z survey that was just released this week. But before we get started, let's take a poll of the room, or the Zoom, so to speak. We're going to launch a poll now and just tell us whether you're on the hiring side, so you're an employer, or whether you're a job seeker. The results are pouring in as you answer this poll. Interesting. Okay, looks like the majority of you have a job. There are some job seekers here as well, which is very helpful for all of us because this webinar is going to cover both aspects. Okay, yes, that looks great. Okay, so results are in. The majority say you have a job and about 3% say you're looking for a job. So we're going to just jump right in. So that's interesting to know. The first thing we want to do is get down to understanding the desperation level. So what this means, it may sound a little harsh, but in years past, when we've done our Gen Z survey, we know that job seekers are often anxious and inexperienced. So we want to understand how we can help them. This time, because of something, the Great Resignation, we didn't expect Gen Z candidates to feel quite so powerless. So were we ever surprised to see that 58% of candidates still think that employers have the upper hand? So candidates, we're going to start with you. Let's talk to our job seekers. When you've been looking for a job, have you felt empowered, like you've had the upper hand? Or have you felt like employers have had the upper hand? So maybe Julian, we'll start with you since you already have a job and you've been through this recently.
Yeah, definitely. So actually, from my perspective, I feel like now is a pretty good time to be a job seeker. I think, as you mentioned, because of the Great Resignation, because of the pandemic, young professionals have thought about what kind of work environment that they'd prefer. So with that, I feel like from my perspective, Gen Z talent is looking looking to work for companies in which they have similar values, or looking for opportunities for career advancement, opportunities for remote work. And now that I think about it, I've seen this firsthand from a lot of from my friends as well, especially those who are working in areas like data analytics, project management. They've been able to land a few interviews, a couple of job offers as well. So yeah, I think from my perspective, now's a pretty good time to be a job seeker.
I agree with you. Our data shows that it's taking employers 40% longer to fill open roles, and 70% of employers have raised entry-level salaries above inflation in the last year. So your point, Julian, absolutely. For a job seeker, it's definitely in their cards. Alice and Lillian, what have your experiences been?
Yeah, I can definitely answer this. I definitely agree with Julian how the Great Resignation is propelling a lot of college students and new Gen Z job seekers to find the companies that represent their interests and what they look for in a company. But I also personally feel like I have the upper hand personally when I educate myself on how the job hunting process works and the resources that I really want to go and specifically look for, especially if I understand the types of roles and qualifications that the specific role provides. I think provides a lot of upper hand advantage for the seeker, because then they know exactly what they're looking for and the best ways to position themselves forward. So definitely I would suggest candidates to understand the role you're interviewing for and to practice your interviewing skills.
Awesome. Great. So we're going to move to the next one with the employers. Does this imbalance of power really resonate with you? And what have you been doing to try to attract new workers?
Well, I'll kick this off. I definitely feel that it is challenging to find talent today that really fits all of the requirements that we're looking for in particular roles. We have some quite specialized opportunities. We're an advertising agency. Sometimes we're looking for very specific creative talent, very specific focused background, so it can be challenging. But I think I heard some good advice already, which is, really having an understanding of what you bring to the table and what the role and the opportunity is. I really do just deeply believe in real matchmaking. So we can have a job description, but it's not just ticking off the requirements on the list. We really are trying to, have good conversations, understand deeply what a candidate is looking for, what they bring to the table, and what they hope to have in an employee experience, and hoping that that really drives connection versus who has the upper hand or not. The ultimate goal, I think, is finding someone to, fit right at home and they feel like they're right at home as well. So that's really the goal. And so I think when you start to focus on real earnest conversations in the interview process, and as an employer, as you're telling someone about who you are as an organization and what your culture is like, hopefully it becomes more of a conversation about, is this the right thing for us together versus who wins, right? Because it's a win ultimately if each person is happy, right? And that's the goal.
Anyone else want to add?
That was just really well said, Juliana.
Thanks.
I can just add a little bit. I definitely think it's more competitive for candidates right now. I don't really think of it in the terms of who's in the driver's seat. But I do think it's more competitive. I think as an employer, there's certain things that we have to do a little bit differently. We definitely have to act faster. We've lost people because we've kind of taken our time. And in the past, that's been fine for us because we're an industry, a lot of people like to seek out and are interested in, but we do have to act a lot quicker now than we've acted in the past. We don't though, we don't settle though. I will say that even though there's a lot of competition for talent, we'd rather hold a job open and make sure we find the right person than hire someone that we're not totally excited about and feel like they're the right fit, because that's never going to work out in the long run for anyone. So that's how we're seeing it right now.
Yeah, no, it's very true. In terms of, what we hear sometimes is the resume black hole. That could be the biggest pain point for our job seekers, like submitting an application online, being left in limbo. But now more and more, we're hearing about job seekers being the ones doing the ghosting, with 74% of recruiters saying they've been ghosted by a candidate lately, although only 34% of candidates can actually fess up to that. So we're going to pause and take another poll. So for job seekers, how many of you have ever been ghosted by an employer during the job search? And employers, how about you? How many of you have been ghosted by candidates? Okay, results are pouring in. We see the majority say yes to ghosting for job seekers. The majority, yes, they have been ghosted during your job search, around 82%. Now for the employer question, recruiters and hiring managers, have you been ghosted by candidates? The majority say yes. It appears that ghosting is prevalent. Right now we're at 95%. Okay, so both employers and job seekers, the majority say yes, you have been ghosted. And what's interesting to add is when we've asked our job seekers in the survey why they ghosted, the majority said that it was because the recruiter was rude or misled the candidate. So interesting point to note. So now we're going to talk to the candidates again. Maybe Lillian, if you want to kick us off. We know that you aren't ghosting, but what's wrong with the job search? What do you think companies should do differently to get Gen Z to actually want to get your generation to want to work for this company, and then to also follow through with the job application process?
Yeah, I think definitely candidates are looking for recruiters to respect their time and energy. And I feel like once a candidate gets the sense that their time is not being respected, they might go into a sort of process where they don't want to confront the recruiter that they're being treated this way, so they go to ghosting. I haven't personally done that, but I think based on some peers, that's probably what's happening in their minds. If the candidate has to go through unnecessary rounds of interviews to the point where it's excessive, I think that's definitely something that candidates aren't looking to go through. And having an overall positive hiring experience and being transparent about salary and pay early on, I think it's something that my generation really values these days.
Yeah, and Alice, what's your take on it?
I've personally been reached out by many recruiters, and it seems like those messages, they don't even read what I'm interested in or what my profile entails. They sometimes contact me for a completely different role, and that's when I know that they haven't really looked at who I am, what I offer, and they probably haven't spent time even looking at who I am as a candidate. They're just spamming each candidate with different messages, and that's the emails that I don't really reply to.
Interesting. It's interesting because it works in the other way too, where employers often say, they applied to my job, but they don't know what our company does. So it's the same. Also, it sounds like that you've experienced as the candidate, which is interesting. So now we're going to turn the tables and ask employers to tell us what they wish candidates would do differently from their resumes to how do they present themselves in an interview. And we ask this because we know there are a ton of job seekers listening right now who really want to know what they can do to put their best foot forward in their job search. So what one or two things do you wish candidates would do differently? And Amy, we're going to kick this off with you.
Okay. Well, one thing is I want to make sure I'm really getting a sense of who the person really is and not necessarily just what they think I want to hear. So, and that really does come through if someone's being genuine and sharing information about themselves and being really honest. I always ask, my final question is always, is there anything else I haven't asked that you want to share with me? And I love seeing the variety of responses that come with that, Some people, it really stumps them. Some people share these really cool, interesting things about themselves. And I get a sense for, will they be additive to our organization, our team? And I love it when they're real and not just regurgitating the job description with that. So that's one thing. The other thing that I'm not sure people realize is we always check with the person that schedules our interviews to see how was someone throughout the process in terms of their responsiveness, their politeness, their flexibility, their communication skills during the scheduling process, because that tells us so much about someone. Are they going to have that good customer service type of approach? Are they going to, however they act there, they're going to bring that to work. And so it's really interesting if someone comes across as very rigid and non-responsive, or if someone comes across as really being warm and friendly and flexible. How they interact with that person says a lot to us about just what we think about them as a candidate.
It's interesting you say that, Amy, because I remember when I worked in recruiting and we always said, was the candidate nice to the receptionist?
Totally. I always ask the receptionist that when we have in-person interviews too. And she has so much, such a depth of information about people and it gets to their character, I think, in terms of how do they treat people when no one's looking is really important.
It's very true. Does anyone else want to weigh in from the employer side?
Yeah, I will. I think I agree with Amy. I think it's about presentation from start to finish. That's important. And I think in the virtual world, because we're all at home or, we're in the office, we're home. So there's a lot of kind of extra noise out there from a presentation standpoint. And I have loved, seeing different things on interviews, but understanding you're still interviewing. So you want to make sure any noise, distractions are limited. Because it can be distracting on both ends and you want to put your best foot forward and you want the interview to be focused on you and not a distraction. And then the other thing, I still think it's really important for you as a candidate to do your research about the company, the person you're interviewing. The amount of information that you have at your fingertips now is, you have LinkedIn, so you can research the person you're going to be interviewing with or the people you're going to be interviewing with. That creates a different kind of connection. And I have to say that you have to have questions prepared. You should be interviewing them as much as the company is interviewing you. And sometimes I think that's where that disconnect is created, is there's no questions. And then you're stuck wondering if this is the job for you.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because at Monster, we always talk about the right fit. So it's finding the right fit for the employers, interviewing the candidates, but also the candidates to clearly evaluate the employer objectively during the interview and ask the questions and really pay attention to the answers. Anyone else for that question? If not, we will move on.
I'll just add, I have so much empathy for recruiters and candidates in the process, right? It's such a moment of vulnerability. The candidates looking for something, the recruiter and hiring managers are trying to find the perfect person. It's such a tough moment. But I do feel like, how you show up genuinely really matters a lot. I think too, what Amy and Jill were both getting at, how you show up and represent who you are and showing your personality a bit. I'm not saying going over the top, but, something that gives us some insight into who you are as a person. I really hope for the future that we can continue to make it more of a human experience versus so transactional. And I do think to Jill's point, having some good questions to ask also is an opportunity, not only to get your questions answered, but to demonstrate how you think, how much research you've done about the company, what types of questions you're asking gives me a sense of what you're trying to figure out about yourself and how you fit into the organization too, right? So that's a really important moment.
Definitely. I'm glad you mentioned that, Juliana. For the next question, we're going to go back to ghosting for a minute. Now, Jill, at Randstad, we know that you place a lot of short-term and contingent workers. So how has ghosting impacted hiring at a staffing firm like yours?
So we're not immune to it, I will say that. And I think it's probably equal to what everybody's already experiencing. I do think, if I know there's a lot of job seekers on there. So if you don't know what a staffing company does, is we partner with companies to find people and we partner with candidates to find companies to go work at. And so it's really a nice way to understand the job market, maybe get your foot in the door with companies you didn't know were out there. And so it certainly has gone up, just like everybody else is experiencing. But there's two things that I think are important that when you think about ghosting, and I understand that a lot of employers have work to do on making sure we create a good candidate experience. But as a candidate, remember that is your brand. So if I get in the world of social media, there's a lot of anonymity in regards to, I can post something and there's no face to it, right? So it's easier to ignore than to accept, to face the challenge or say no, or I'm not interested. So keep that in mind. And you want to make sure that every interaction you have creates your personal brand, because you never know when you might need to go back to that company. You might need to go back to that recruiter and say, I'm now looking for a job. And so that is something we really try with our candidates, is to help them understand that, ghosting is not going to get you far on the long term. It might be in the short term, but in the long term, you have to think of the end game. You have to think of the future. You don't want to burn those bridges. So
true. So we're going to take a minute to talk about another trending topic. We're covering a lot in this hour. So again, we're glad that you're here to join us. So let's talk about another trending topic, which is remote work. And there's been a lot of talk lately about it. Will it last? Is it a deal breaker for candidates? So ready for another poll. Candidates, would you rather work remotely or in person? As the results come in, wow, the majority saying yes, you would really prefer to work remotely. About 74% remote, in person 26%. Okay, there we go. So 73% of you said yes, you want to work remotely rather than in person, compared to 27% of you who said in person. Which is really interesting to have this conversation now. And then the question is for the employers. Our survey revealed that 81% of employers don't completely trust that entry-level workers can excel in a remote environment. What has been your experience?
Well, from my perspective, it's honestly mixed, is the truth. I just think, though, that generalizing can hurt you and have you miss out on great talent. So it is, again, as we've talked about, how to show up in an interview and how to ask good questions and how to show up in a genuine way. I think a part of the interview, as well as on, in the hands of the employer, to really be listening to what that employee needs, right? If you are in an environment that is strictly in person, if it's hybrid, fine. But you may want to, one, listen to what the candidate is telling you about their preferred experience. It might influence a little bit your offering for your other employee base. It doesn't mean that just because a Gen Z person wants something that no one else finds that desirable, right? So it's an opportunity to listen a little bit, but also think about how you can be creative in adapting for talent that you really want. And sometimes you have to have a little bit of flexibility, or at least consider it, be open to that conversation, be open-minded, I think is the goal, and have those conversations honestly and see what works. I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that it just categorically doesn't work, but I think part of the concern is just wanting to make sure that if it's someone in an entry-level role, that they're having a good employee experience, onboarding, learning. A lot of times what you get from even a hybrid experience of working side by side with someone is you get to shadow, you get to see some of the small hallway conversations where decisions are made, right? So there's benefits to that connection and closeness, but I think there's just probably has to be a little bit of listening and open-mindedness about what next steps might be.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And Shelly, what are your thoughts?
I love this question because I personally love remote work. So whenever I get a lot of candidates who want to, let's say I hire for California primarily. California is very expensive. And I get a lot of Texas candidates like myself that, want to stay in Texas. They want to live here because it's so much cheaper. So for me, I really trust our candidates to work remotely because our managers, I feel like I can trust them to train them remotely. And I feel like I am able to trust that, okay, they'll be available, they'll be here whenever a new grad has questions about the role, things like that. So I feel like everybody's so different that some people do prefer hybrid, some people do prefer in person, some people do prefer remote. So at Pinterest, I feel like we're very flexible for that reason. On my end, I trust a candidate to work remotely just because, I mean, I do it every day. And yes, it provides some level of flexibility that isn't available in person, but you guys know yourselves best, right? Like, you know how well you work. The process to get into Pinterest is pretty competitive as it is with many other companies. So I feel like if you make it to that round and you want to stay here, you want to be successful and you choose us, then you'll know yourself best. You'll know whether you can work best at home with no distractions or with distractions, or even go into the office. For some people, being in the office isn't an option. For others, it is. So it just kind of depends. So from my end, I kind of just trust candidates know themselves best. But also I put a lot of weight on how good the manager training those candidates is as well. Like it's our responsibility to be there and to be available, and to help them through that training process. So hopefully that helps.
No, it's interesting what you said for candidates to know themselves best. So now I'm going to toggle over to Julian, Alice, and Lillian. For you, is remote work a deal breaker, or would you rather work in person? And basically, what do you think might be missing out on if you were working remotely 100%?
I feel really strongly about this, so I'm going to take it. But I saw a comment that said remote work is what you make it, and I agree so much with that. I've worked primarily in remote, and I took the time when onboarding to build one-on-ones with my coworkers to really talk to them, get to know them. That's something that you have to reach out to do, because if you're just sitting at home, you're not going to get that interaction with your coworkers that you might in office. And it's so important, because these coworkers have given me advice how to survive my first day, how to go on from there. And those meaningful connections can be still made with remote. I have people that I can go to when I'm feeling insecure or anxious, and they calm me down and they help me in my work life. And with my first internship, I was scared of presenting. And then after a semester of that internship, I returned to school and I was presenting in front of class. And I realized suddenly that I wasn't scared of talking in front of people anymore. And that was something I gained through talking to a computer. This is totally possible. And I really think this is the future of remote work. So I'm really, really happy that this is a thing when I came into working.
Great. Julian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So I agree with everything that Alice was saying. For me, so I remember interning for my current team the summer of 2019 before the pandemic. And I remember my commute was about an hour and a half one way to my office. And so day in and day out, I just remember feeling kind of lethargic, low energy. And so working remotely has definitely helped me save that time and energy. I can better invest that time and energy into my projects, into even outside of work, just spending time with friends and family. And working remotely just helps me better integrate my work and my life, while also ensuring I'm on track to completing my projects in a timely fashion. But yeah, that being said, I definitely see the importance of going into the office, right? I feel like it's easier to make those connections with your coworkers, with your bosses, in person. So I think that's where the hybrid model can be a happy medium. But yeah, my preference is definitely working remotely.
Lillian, what's your preference?
I believe she must have cut out or internet connection.
Oh, okay. Well, it's interesting. I'm checking out the chat over here, and someone mentioned that working remotely can lead to isolation. So that leads us to talking about mental health. So each generation has its own unique challenge as they enter the workforce, whether it's coming in during a recession like millennials or a financial crisis like Gen X. But one thing that's 100% unique about Gen Z is that they've come of age during a worldwide pandemic. We have yet to see the long-term impact of this, but the short-term impact is certainly mental health concerns. In our survey, 91% of Gen Z told us they want to feel comfortable talking about mental wellness at work. So candidates, what are you most anxious about when it comes to looking for work or coming to work, and what do you need help with?
Sure, I can get started here. Yeah, so in terms of what could make Gen Z talent, or especially like recent college graduates, anxious about looking for work and the job search, especially those who haven't had much of a chance to potentially intern during their time in college. I'm thinking they might be anxious seeing job descriptions requiring years of experience when it's hard for them to have that experience under their belt since they were in school. So I guess that being said, I'd encourage recruiters and companies to keep this in mind and potentially, if possible, prioritize things like a candidate's potential, their enthusiasm, and their character, as opposed to simply their years of experience, especially when recruiting for those types of like entry-level roles. Also, I feel like, generally speaking, transparency is definitely key. So I think candidates who go through the job search, especially those who go through a majority of it, but they don't necessarily get the job offer, I think they'd benefit greatly from receiving feedback in terms of how they could improve for the future. And those are some of the thoughts that I was thinking about.
And it's such a great time to talk about this because we have a ton of employers in the audience who really want to make sure they create the right kind of workplace. They're listening. So Alice, what are your thoughts on this?
I have so many thoughts, but for employers, when you're even creating that job application, I really want to create that empathy for job seekers. So when you create, give a cover letter, give your resume, write an essay, do this assessment that takes maybe an hour, and I have to play these games to test my risk volatility, thinking about the candidate, and the candidate has to apply. Some of my interns told me that they had to apply to 100 applications. We had to go through 100 of these. So really, you guys were missing out talent if you make such a long, extensive application. And I really, really love what Juliana said about, are you building a connection? At the end of this, I want to build a connection with my employer. I want to demonstrate that I have the qualifications for it. I will build a resume that's strong enough to convey that to you. But at the end of the day, I want to talk to a recruiter. I want to learn about the team. I want to build that genuine connection, but it's so hard because you guys put these barriers before building that connection, and I can't get through. I'm just stuck on the outside, and I'm like banging on the door. I'm qualified, like, let me in. But everybody that I want to make a connection is emails away, phone calls away, interviews away. And it's just really, really hard.
Yeah, no, we hear it. And so for the employers, have you noticed this increase in a need for more mental wellness, or younger candidates requesting this as part of their benefits or work culture? And if so, in what ways?
I can take a stab at that. We're seeing it across the board, not just with our younger candidates and employees. It's really every generation. And we've really tried to be thoughtful in how we supplement our benefits program to just provide different options. So for example, we rolled out a Headspace benefit a few years back for our employees, and our players are actually taking part in it too. And it's been just really helpful. We're very fortunate in that the resources that we have as a baseball team, we actually have a team psychiatrist who has a staff of psychologists, and we have a group of employees called mental skills coordinators that have led mindfulness workshops for our employees. And so we try to do things both providing resources from the outside, but also kind of leveraging the internal experts that we have to provide safe spaces for conversations or tips on mindfulness and meditating. We also have been focusing a lot on all different aspects of wellness, not just mental health, because if for some people, if you take the time to work out and have more of a physical activity, that can also have an impact on your mental health. So we really have been focusing a lot on that from all different perspectives. And really everyone of all ages has really been vocal about wanting that lately.
And so it sounds like when they're vocal, your response as an organization is that you listen and you engage. It sounds like it's a two-way street.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when we're thinking about mental health, we've had as a world quite a couple of years. And even when we're thinking about remote work, working in the office, not every solution works for every person. And so you also can't be in a situation where you're just waiting to hear from an employee about what they need, right? You can adapt, but I think it's really important. I love that you all are doing Headspace. We're doing that too, which is great. But it's nice to have robust options for employees and be listening so that you can add, enhance, adapt as needed. Because, people do have a lot of needs now. And I think we are hopefully creating an environment where people feel comfortable sharing what they need versus what I think may have happened in the past is it's just kind of a grin and bear it environment, and there's no space for hearing what people actually need. I think that's a good bit of progress, happily, to see that change happening. But I think there's still room to continue to listen and engage in empathy in the workplace. We have an effort across Arnold and Havas called Be Kind to Your Mind. And so we've got in essence, a global effort here to always be having conversations about mental health. We have webinars consistently with outside experts coming in to give their best advice about how to manage and protect yourself against burnout, how to have healthy conversations, how to create healthy boundaries, things that people really need, whether you realize it or not, even if you vocalized it or not. We have offerings for people because, you can't wait sometimes for people to just say, I need this, you should provide.
So true. And Shelly, can you share what's going on at Pinterest in terms of if younger candidates are requesting this as part of their benefits or work culture and how your organization's been responding?
Yeah, for sure. So everybody's been a little different. But I've noticed that our younger candidates are more candid about this. So kind of what you were saying, Juliana, I think they don't always tell you, right? Like our candidates don't always say, I'm stressed out, there's a lot going on. But what I've noticed whenever I first started was that I had candidates telling me, hey, is there any way I can reschedule this interview? I have a lot of finals. And at first I was like, whoa, that's amazing that you said that. Like you admitted that to me as a recruiter, like when I first started, because I remember when I was a job seeker, I would have never said that. I would just been like, and not because you shouldn't, I think you 100% should. It's just like, I never had the guts to. And now I'm seeing like my sister is graduating this May, and it's the same thing. Like you're more open and candid about what you need. So what I've been trying to do to kind of, it's kind of what you said too, Alice, like you don't really know these people or these candidates until you make that personal connection. And from my end, whenever we do phone screens, because quite frankly, we do have so many, it's hard to keep track, but we try to build that candid connection of just being like, hey, is this a good time to interview you? Like, do you have finals? Is something happening? Just little things like that. And then they're open, and I feel like they're not always open and honest, but for the most part, I do get candidates that resonates with them, right? You're able to share like, this isn't good. I feel like I would do better if I do this next week, or this is what I need in terms of the benefits because of XYZ. And then for us recruiters too, we're kind of not told, but we're encouraged to share our own experiences within Pinterest. Like for me, I mental health is something that I care a lot about, just because, I had siblings that have gone through things that are very stressful. So for me, I share that I'm in this group or this community within Pinterest that supports this program. And that just comes organically whenever you're just kind of sharing a little bit about what Pinterest has to offer, or your company has to offer, just sharing a little bit more about what within that company you have outside of just work, right? Like a community outside of just work. And then oftentimes I find that our candidates are like, that's really cool. Can you tell me about diversity at Pinterest, or tell me about mental health at Pinterest, or a Latin group at Pinterest because I'm Hispanic, and things like that. So, it's amazing to me that this generation is able and willing and very much capable of having those very professional conversations about where their head's at, what they're feeling. And even like, again, Juliana, what you said, not everybody's going to tell you, But just if we're doing that on our end as recruiters, I feel like it can go a long way and really build that personal connection. And instead of just filling roles, you're filling roles with people who genuinely want to stay and work for the company, essentially, because I mean, you care about them. So of course they're going to care about you a little bit more than just, if you're not helping them out.
Yeah, so true. We're going to jump to the final question and then head into our Q&A. We have so many great questions to cover today. So for our final question to employers, what's the one thing that's going to make candidates stand out? What's the one takeaway from today that they should remember to help improve their job search experience?
I think, not even job search, but just career advice too. Think about the long term. If you're looking for a career, you want to think about the company you think you can build that career with. And so you need to be searching for that. And that's, getting into a role and being there 6 months and then moving to a different company. You're not going to be able to build a career that way. And so you really want to go into it thinking about the long term and what kind of experience can the company offer you? What kind of career path can they offer you? Because really about building your career, it's about resilience, agility, all of those things that you'll need to think about in the long term. And you need to do that as you're thinking about the short term as well.
Shelly?
I think a lot. Oh,
Sorry.
Go for it.
Go for it, Juliana. I'm still thinking of mine.
Okay. I really feel strongly that, each person in an organization contributes so much to the culture. And while there may be a job description with so many bullet points underneath of all the requirements and all the things that you need to do, what I feel is so important is how you can actually work with a team. And I don't mean just being a team player and taking on all the extra work when no one's doing something. I really mean how you work with others and invite people into conversations, into problem resolution, into solution building. That's a huge way of how we work with one another. And so what I always hope to see, if that's who you are, to let that shine, because it adds to the dynamics of any team, generally any culture. And I think people want to work with someone that feels like you can work with them, even when things might be challenging. So if that is a skill that you have, play that up. And ask some questions around that, ask about team dynamics so you have the opportunity to share how you can contribute to that, because that also enhances the culture and makes it a great place to work.
So true. Amy or Shelly, what's your last big takeaway before we go to Q&A?
I would say just to be very thoughtful and responsive throughout the process and genuinely yourself. I think it's just, if you can do those three things, then as a recruiter, it just helps me understand kind of who you are and what you'll be like working with. And so those are things that I would pass on.
I'll be quick. Basically for me, I'd say share what you want to learn. I think that shows a lot about where you want to be. Even if it's something that's not exactly related to the position that you're applying for us at least, I feel like sometimes then I can think of, maybe they'd be a better fit for this role. So share what you want to learn, be candid about that. Of course, try to do your research on the company and the role itself that you're applying for, but share what you want to learn personally or within your career.
Great. So true. We are going to start the Q&A. We have so many great questions to get to. The first one, benefits and perks. What's the most important benefit for candidates today outside of pay? What is Gen Z looking for in a job? PTO, remote work, flexible, better hours? Who wants to weigh in first? Alice, you're shaking your head. What's most important to you?
So many things, but I think it's what Juliana said, that our employers offer these things, but they also listen. For me, I have a coworker who has a LinkedIn, and she shares these amazing cafeteria. They just do these amazing dishes, and I am lusting over LinkedIn. I'm just like, wow, you guys get sashimi, you guys get porridge, and it's also ethnic foods as well, and it's so inclusive, and it instantly makes me feel, wow, they care about their employees. Just food. And that's something unique to me. Like someone else might be like, oh, I'm not going to the office for food, but I would. So it's different for everybody, but that's something that I really, that's real appealing to me.
Lillian or Julian, what's appealing to you?
I definitely think good work-life balance is really important for a lot of people like myself and my peers. And also a lot of the other free amenities a lot of tech companies provide are really enticing, like their free food, like free gym, therapy, and all those that go on. So those are some things I like personally consider.
Excellent. From the employer side, are you noticing that you're changing your benefits and perks in reaction to what Gen Z is asking for?
Well, I think we're changing them and adjusting, but also speaking to them differently. I think it's so important now more than ever to, in earlier conversations, summarize the culture in terms of the work environment and team environment, but also what we're bringing to the table from a package perspective before you even get to the offer, right? Talking about flexibility, talking about 401k, talking about other perks and ways that we come together as a culture, because we do so much. You don't know which thing resonates the most with a person in earliest conversations, right? So we're kind of putting it all on the table to say, here are all of the things. Are any of these things kind of speaking to you? Do you like some more than others? Is there anything that it feels like it's not quite meeting what you need? It's an opportunity, again, just inviting the question of, what are we missing that we should be doing that we haven't heard or done anything about? So it's an opportunity.
Yes, and it sounds, like open and honest communication, which leads to a common question that we got is about correspondence. So it's communication between employers and candidates. So how does Gen Z prefer to be contacted so they are more likely to respond? Would it be text, email, or phone calls?
I definitely think emails are the to go, but also I think a lot of people, like myself, also really appreciate the phone calls when it comes to discussing timelines or offer negotiations. So yeah, that's just my take on it.
Julian, you're nodding your head, yes.
I agree. Yeah, I'd say email is probably my preferred method of communication when it comes to that correspondence. Even communicating through LinkedIn, I think works for me as well.
I like to just add, because I saw a lot of texting. And the thing with texting, imagine texting your crush. You have so much anxiety with each word. You don't know what the person is saying. You can't hear their voice. So it brings so much anxiety. And I think emailing to schedule a time, hey, when are you free for a phone call? And then you call them and it's perfect. I don't think I want texting at all.
Employers, what's been most effective for you in communicating with Gen Z candidates?
It seems like email works best. There are times when you get far down in the process where, again, if you've kind of created that connection, maybe there's an opportunity to connect really quickly on certain logistics via text. It just really kind of depends on how you've established your communication so far. But if people are open to it, sometimes that works to just make things happen. I think sometimes it can demonstrate, hey, we're really trying to move this fast. And, I don't want anything to get buried in email. So I just want to shoot you a quick update, keeping it limited, not having extensive back and forth over text, but for quick logistics, sometimes that can help.
I agree. I think anything logistics wise, it's email or text once you start to whittle down your candidate pool and you're only talking with a few people for a search, but anything that has more depth to it, I think a phone conversation is important, especially as you get farther down in the search, because you really want to develop more of a rapport and a relationship and connection with the candidate. And that can't be done as much through email or text, in my opinion.
I'll even add to that. I think too, having the phone conversation, I've noticed that with a lot of our younger candidates, it also allows them to ask the questions that might be looming that they need to get, to help with, understanding and making sure the expectations are still there and that everybody's on the same page. So I have found that when we do communicate via phone, we get a lot more questions that way, which helps, I think, the process as we continue to go through it.
Great.
I think the more opportunity for human to human conversation and understanding, leaves more room for understanding, eliminates miscommunications. It's just nice to talk to someone, right?
Definitely. We're going to move on to the next question, which is about leveraging social media for recruiting. We got a lot of questions about social media. How are YouTube and TikTok being used by job seekers to find work? And can you give specific examples of how these channels are being utilized? Is Facebook or Snapchat still a viable resource? Who wants to jump right in? Okay, so Julian, Alice, or Lillian, any your perspective in terms of leveraging social media, and then we'll go to the employer side of it.
It's very much about personal branding. I'm sorry. I assume that Julian have the social media, so they would talk. But again, I have a LinkedIn profile, and I very much brand myself as a creative, and that's something that helps in my work. And I think, again, with personal branding, you want this person to know, one, you're qualified, but who are you as a person? Something that they can't really know. But if you happen to create a profile and kind of put things that you like, things that represent you, they get a gist of who they're talking to, and that helps when you're continuing that conversation.
Definitely +1. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, definitely +1 to the personal branding. That's what I completely agree with. But also something that I've noticed is really interesting is that if you go on TikTok, there are a lot of people who make like work vlogs about their daily life, or they answer questions directly from their audience about what it's like to work at XYZ or how to get a job in XYZ field. So I think for job seekers in that sense, it's a really interesting perspective in how they can discover new roles and interview strategies from their peers and learn about honest thoughts about their work-life culture or their company they work at. So I think it's a really interesting shift that we're seeing in like today's social media world.
And what's interesting to piggyback that notion is we're seeing that shift also with employers, not necessarily posting jobs on TikTok or doing reels on Instagram, but more so to show the culture, show, current employees talking about their job, to really showcase what it's like to work there. Are any of the employers on the panel leveraging social media this way, or how are you leveraging it?
I mean, we're creative agencies. So, we're definitely always trying to tell the story of who we are and what it might feel like to work here on social media. We certainly, especially for our creative talent, are looking at their socials. It's amazing, some of the social accounts that are out there from the candidates that we've seen. It's fun to see what they're doing and how they're showing their personality, the art that they like, the things that they're making. It's just a really cool opportunity. So I hope that people see it as, again, a way of connecting and seeing someone kind of coming to life on screen a little bit more than what you have sometimes opportunities to do in the process. This gives you another bit of insight into the person. I think we've evolved over time. I think maybe in the past it may have felt a little cringe, honestly, to some, to not like kind of hit the mark on how you're showing up on social. But I think it's evolved quite a bit, where it is just more of a genuine opportunity to highlight who you are from the employer side, from the candidate side, and it's fun to see how people are showing up.
Yeah, take into consideration how people buy just consumer goods. I most of the things I buy now, it's because I've seen a video or I've seen something posted. And so we have to think that way as employers, that, it's not billboards, it's not radio advertisements, it's how people buy. And that's also how they look for jobs, and they get connected to companies and to the jobs that they're looking for.
Definitely. We're going to move on to the next question. This is for employers. How has recruiting college grads changed in the past 4 years?
I was having a hard time thinking of an answer to this one. I think I will say in the past year, we have to move faster for sure. There's a lot more opportunity for candidates even than there was a year ago. And we need to move the process along. And if we see someone that we really love, not feel like we need to see 5 other people that we love to compare that one person to, and to really kind of move through the process a little quicker without settling, and to move our hiring managers through the process. That's one thing that I've noticed just in the past year. But to think about in comparison to 4 years ago, that's where I'm a little stumped.
I think
Well, I
it's
just
about
think
what people are looking for. You know, if you think about in 2018, what people wanted and what college grads, you know, thought the workforce was and what it is today are very, very different. I mean, I said to somebody the other day, I've seen more change in the last 2 years than I did in my previous 15 years of leadership. So it's, again, it's fast, it's quick, and having to adapt very quickly as an employer is extremely important.
And what's interesting too is, unlike any other generation, internships as well were remote. So candidates are looking for new jobs right now. They may not have had internships that would be a traditional internship. So employers are being resilient and flexible in terms of, okay, what experience do they have that can qualify, because everyone was in the same boat.
I think now we also have to be, you know, as employers, better experts on other markets, right? We're not local anymore, right? We are looking and talking to talent in so many different areas. All of the physical walls have come down, and we are, you know, connecting with folks in all different areas. So again, in these early conversations that you're having with candidates to talk about why it's great to work in Boston, yeah, compared to what? You know, am I talking to somebody in Chicago or New York or California? You know, being able to have a full grasp on what's happening across markets is really helpful to also help the candidate. You know, you're sometimes talking to somebody from Florida who might be moving to Boston. You've got to be able to help them understand what that move is like, what they're comparing cities to. And again, and just the effort to help someone figure out if this opportunity really makes sense for them in their lives. I also think about the interview process as really just trying to help usher someone through, right? We're all trying to make the right decision here. How am I preparing myself to answer questions of this candidate to make sure they're making a good decision? And I've got to be informed in more than several ways to do that.
So true. We're going to move on to the next question. This is for candidates. What is something present or missing from a job posting that would make you skip it or not apply?
I can answer here. So I was actually talking to a couple of my friends who've been going through the job search about this. And they were saying about how they're, I guess, less likely to apply, or I'll say they'd rather apply to positions with job descriptions that include things like the salary range or just opportunities for career advancement, just to make sure that Gen Z talent and employers are aligned from the get-go from that perspective.
Alice and Lillian, it looks like you're both agreeing to that. Do you want to expand?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the job description in terms of writing in a way in which candidates can see if there's room for growth or opportunity, and seeing there's a culture that aligns with that sort of mindset is really something that I think a lot of my friends and peers at school are looking for.
Great. We are going to go into a relaunch of a poll because this came in with the hybrid option. In the beginning, we asked about remote work or working 100% in the office, and hybrid came up. So we're going to launch a poll right now, and then we're in the home stretch, then we're going to wrap up. So would you rather work from home, hybrid, or in the office? Thank you all for these great questions. I wish we had time to answer all of them. Okay, the results are pouring in. Interesting. Going to the office is literally less than 10%. I'm glad we asked this question and reworded it. Okay, so a hybrid. Okay, 62% of you prefer a hybrid situation, 31% work remotely, and 7% go into the office. So interesting information for our candidates and employers watching. So that wraps it up. So thank you again to all of our incredible panelists. You really brought so much of yourselves and your experiences into today's webinar, and we greatly appreciate it. Looking for a job, especially your first true professional job, is hard and it's scary. And our friends who are doing the hiring, we know it's tough out there right now. It looks like the next generation of workers is primed and ready to go and will hopefully make your jobs a lot easier. At Monster, we try to do as much as we can to help candidates and employers find the right fit. Job seekers, we hope all of you have signed up for email job alerts at monster.com. And employers, we have so many tools and solutions to help connect you with our job seekers. We invite you to explore them at hiring.monster.com. We'll also be emailing you all with some follow-up materials, including this recording, but also our new hiring guide, and for seekers, tips on how to get a recruiter's attention. Thank you, everyone.